was on the couch with a cup of tea, half watching something, scrolling my phone the mindless way you do at the end of a long day, when a photograph I was not supposed to see slid up into my feed and quietly ended the life I thought I was living. It was not even a photo anyone had sent me. That is the part I keep coming back to. A restaurant out at the lake, a place I had never been, had posted one of those weekend albums, tagging the guests, the way businesses do now, and one of the people they tagged was a woman I followed, and so it floated into my feed at 9:40 on a Thursday night, completely by accident, the universe just dropping it in my lap. I almost scrolled past it, and then my thumb stopped, because in the center of the photo, laughing, with his hand on the small of a woman's back, was my husband. On a weekend he had told me he was 4 hours away, on a guys-only fishing trip, with no women anywhere near it. Let me back up and tell you who I was before my thumb stopped on that screen, because the woman who started scrolling that night and the woman who finished are not the same person, and I want you to feel the distance between them. My name is Erin. I am 41 years old, and I am a dental hygienist here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I clean teeth, and I make nervous people feel safe in the chair, and I am good at it, and I have a steady, ordinary, good life, or I believed I did. I have been married to Ryan for 16 years. We have 2 kids, a 12-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. We have a house with a mortgage and a dog and a minivan, and we have a friend group. And that friend group matters enormously to this story, so hold on to it. 4 or 5 couples, all of us tangled together for a decade. Cabin weekends, kids' birthday parties, a group chat that pinged all day, Friday dinners that rotated between our houses. Those people were not acquaintances. They were, I would have told you that Thursday afternoon, my family, my village, the people I would have called at 3 in the morning, the people I trusted with my children, and the woman with my husband's hand on her back, in the photograph from the lake, was one of them. Her name is Steph. She was, I had believed for 10 years, one of my closest friends. 16 years with Ryan, and I want to tell you that I was not a naive wife, because that is what everyone quietly assumes afterward, that the betrayed woman must have been blind, must have ignored some glaring sign. I had not ignored anything. Ryan was a good husband on paper, and mostly in practice. He coached our son's baseball team. He did the grocery run on Sundays. He rubbed my feet when I came home aching from a double shift. We were not in some obvious crisis. We had the ordinary friction of 16 years and 2 kids and a mortgage, the low-grade tiredness that every long marriage runs on, but nothing that whispered affair to me, nothing that would have made a reasonable woman start checking phones. That is the particular cruelty of the open secret. It does not require you to be a fool. It only requires you to trust the person you married and the friends you chose, to do, in other words, exactly what a person is supposed to do, and then it punishes you for having done it. I trusted Ryan because trusting Ryan was the sane and correct thing to do, right up until the second that it wasn't. I sat there on the couch, and I looked at that photograph for a very long time. I told myself, the way you do, that there was an explanation, that it was a candid moment, a friendly hand, a coincidence of timing. But I am not a stupid woman, and the body does not lie the way the mouth does. And there are things in the geometry of 2 people, the angle of them, the ease of them, the way her head was tipped, that you cannot unsee once you have seen them, because some animal part of you reads them faster than your hopeful brain can argue. I knew. Before I had any proof at all, I knew. The way you know a sound in your own house is wrong. I zoomed in on the photograph. I made myself do it slowly, like a person diffusing something, and every detail I had hoped would save me did the opposite. Steph was wearing a sundress I had never seen, the kind you buy for an occasion. Ryan was wearing the gray Henley I had given him for his birthday, the one he had told me he had left at the office. They were not posed together the way you pose with a friend's spouse. They were leaning into each other, the way you lean into a person whose body you already know, an unconscious, settled, married kind of closeness, except it was the wrong marriage. And in the very corner of the frame, half out of it, was a hand I recognized, holding a drink belonging to one of the other husbands in our group. He was there too. He was sitting 6 feet away from it, in the same frame, smiling at the camera. Nobody in that photograph looked like they were getting away with anything. They looked comfortable. They looked like people who did this often and had stopped being nervous about it a long time ago. And then, I did the thing that turned this from a private heartbreak into something much larger and much colder. I started pulling the thread. I went to the restaurant's full album, and there were more photos, and in those photos, there were other people I knew. Two other couples from our group at the lake, that same weekend. The weekend of the guys-only fishing trip with no women anywhere near it. They had all been there. My friends had all been at the lake, with my husband, and with Steph, together, while I sat at home with our kids believing a story about fish. It was not a secret affair. That is the thing that took the air out of me. I had walked into the kitchen that night, braced to discover that my husband had a secret. What I discovered instead was that my husband had a life, a whole second life, conducted in the open, at the lake, in front of our friends, photographed and posted and tagged, and that the only person on earth from whom it was a secret was me. The wife? They had not been hiding it from everyone. They had been hiding it from one person, and managing everyone else, and everyone else had agreed to be managed. I scrolled the rest of that album 3 times, and then I started doing the math that no one should ever have to do about her own marriage. I checked the date stamp. I checked it against my own calendar, against the text Ryan had sent me that very weekend. A photo of a lake and a fishing rod. Caught one today, miss you guys. Which I now understood he had either staged or borrowed. A prop for the story. I checked the restaurant's older posts and found that the group had been there before, months earlier. Another trip I had also not been on. Also not been told the full truth about. Each new tab I opened took something else from me. I was sitting in my own warm living room, with my children asleep down the hall and my husband asleep upstairs, conducting a forensic investigation into the discovery that my entire recent life had a hidden architecture I had never been shown the blueprints for. By the time I closed the laptop, it was nearly 2 in the morning, and I was not crying anymore. I was something colder than crying. I was awake in a way I had never been before. I did not sleep that night. Ryan was already in bed. He had come home from his real trip, wherever he had actually been, 2 days before, and kissed me and asked about my week. I lay beside him in the dark, and I did not wake him because I was busy. In the cold, methodical way grief makes you busy, going back through the previous months and rereading every single thing in the light of what I now knew. And oh, the things that reread themselves. The dinner 6 weeks earlier that I had heard about afterward, that somehow I had not been invited to, where I had told myself there must have been a mix-up. The way Steph had gotten a little distant with me over the summer, a little careful, which I had chalked up to her being busy. The way one of the other wives, Dana, had hugged me too long and too hard at the last birthday party and said, "Are you doing okay, hun? Really okay?" with a strange weight on it. And I had laughed and said, "Of course. Why?" The whole group chat, pinging all day with everything except the one thing. I went back through months of my own life, and I watched it quietly rearrange itself into a picture I had been standing in the middle of and could not see. A circle of people who knew, walking carefully around a woman who didn't, keeping the peace, keeping it pleasant, keeping their comfortable little world from having to have the hard conversation, at the cost of letting me be humiliated in front of all of them, for months, without a clue. That was the betrayal that actually brought me to my knees. I thought about the last Friday dinner, 3 weeks before, at our house. I had made my big lasagna, the one everyone always asks for. I had stood at my own stove, flushed and happy, refilling wine glasses, telling a long story about a patient, and the whole table had laughed in the right places. And every single person at that table, except me, had known. They had eaten my lasagna and drunk my wine and laughed at my story while holding, behind their teeth, the fact that my husband was sleeping with the woman sitting 3 chairs down passing the bread. Steph had complimented the lasagna. She had asked for the recipe. I had written it out for her on a card the next morning and felt warm about it. When I let myself picture that dinner now, from the outside, the way they all must have seen it. The oblivious wife, glowing, hostessing her own humiliation. I understood that I had not simply been betrayed. I had been watched being betrayed by an audience that had bought tickets and quietly agreed not to tell the woman on stage what the play was actually about. Not Ryan. I want to be honest about that because it surprised me. Ryan's betrayal was enormous, but it was at least the expected kind, the kind there are words and songs and lawyers for. The betrayal that I had not braced for, the one with no name and no script, was the silence of the people I had called my family. Every one of them had made a choice. Each of them had looked at me, at Friday dinners, in the group chat, at that birthday party, knowing what they knew, and had decided that telling me was not their place, that it would be too awkward, that it was between Ryan and me, that it was kinder somehow to let me keep smiling and serving the potato salad while the whole table held a secret about my own marriage. I confronted Ryan the next morning, after the kids were at school. I will not give you the whole ugly scene. You can imagine it, and it went the way these things go. He tried to minimize. He used the word complicated. He eventually admitted it had been going on most of a year, and that yes, the others knew. And then he said the thing that I think every betrayed person eventually hears. The thing that told me everything. He said, I didn't want to blow up the whole friend group over it. Over it. As though my marriage were a minor disturbance, and the real fragile, precious thing that needed protecting was the group's comfort. And the worst part is that he was only saying out loud what all of them had silently decided. The whole village had agreed, without ever taking a vote, that keeping the peace was worth more than my right to know the truth about my own life. I asked him, in that kitchen, the only question I really needed answered. Not how long, not why, not who else. I asked him, if that restaurant had never tagged that photo, if it had stayed quiet a little longer, how long were you going to let me go on like this? How many more lasagnas? How many more Fridays of me serving wine to people laughing at me? And he did not have an answer. He looked at the floor and he said he did not know, and I believe that was the one fully honest thing he said all morning. He did not know. There was no plan to tell me, no date circled, no limit to how long he would have let me live inside the lie, as long as the lie stayed comfortable for him. I would have gone on being the last to know indefinitely. The only reason I was standing in that kitchen knowing anything at all was a restaurant's social media account and a tagging algorithm. Not my husband, not one of my friends. A piece of software did for me what every human being who claimed to love me had declined to do. I want to be fair, because this channel is a place where we try to be fair even when it costs us, and a story with no nuance is just a story with the hard part left out. The friends who stayed silent were not monsters. I have thought about this a great deal. They were cowards, which is a much more ordinary and much more common thing than monstrousness. I have even asked myself honestly whether I would have had the courage to be the one to tell a friend that her husband was cheating, to walk up to someone I loved and detonate her whole life, with no certainty she would even believe me, with the near certainty that some part of her would forever associate me with the worst day of her life. It is genuinely hard. I do not pretend it is easy, but I have landed, after all these months, in a clear place, and it is this. It is hard, and someone should have done it anyway. Hard is not the same as wrong. The discomfort of telling me the truth was theirs to bear for one terrible afternoon. The humiliation of not being told was mine to carry for months, in front of all of them. They chose to hand the heavier thing to me so they could avoid the lighter thing themselves, and they called that not getting involved, and it was not neutral. Silence is not neutral. When you know a truth that is wrecking someone, and you keep it to protect your own comfort, you have not stayed out of it. You have chosen a side, and it is not theirs. So I made my own choices, and I made them clear-eyed, and I am at peace with them. I left Ryan. There was never really a question. A man who builds a year-long affair in the open and then mourns the friend group is not a man in the middle of a marriage. He is a man who left it a long time ago and didn't tell me. The divorce is in progress. It is not pleasant, but it is clean in the way that matters. I'm not begging, and I'm not pretending. and I'm not trying to reassemble something that was already in pieces before I found the photograph. And I left the village. That was, in some ways, the harder goodbye, because I had loved those people, and because losing your whole social world at 41, in the same season you lose your marriage, is a particular kind of lonely. But I could not go back to those Friday dinners and pass the potato salad to people who had watched me be a fool and decided it was none of their business. I would always have been the woman they had managed. So I let them go. The group chat went quiet around me. The way these things do, everyone relieved, I think, not to have to look at the evidence of their own silence. But here is the part I hold on to, the part that is not bleak. Two of them did not stay silent in the end. Dana, the one who had hugged me too hard and asked if I was okay, called me the day after it all came out, weeping, and told me she had been sick about it for months, that she had wanted to tell me 100 times and had let the others talk her out of it, that it was the worst thing she had ever been part of, and that she was so deeply sorry. And another woman, Kim, who was newer to the group and on the edge of it, told me she had only just hurt herself and had immediately thought of me. Those two are still in my life. They are, in fact, more truly in my life now than they ever were before, because we have been through the fire of this together, and we have agreed, the three of us, on what we will and will not do to each other ever again. It turns out that losing a whole village can leave you with two real friends, and that two real friends are worth more than a whole village of comfortable ones. I did not know that before. I know it now, and I would not trade it back. It has been a hard year, and I am not going to pretend otherwise for the sake of a tidy ending. There were months where the loneliness of it was physical, where I missed the village even knowing exactly what the village was, the way you can miss a thing that hurt you. My kids have had their own grief to move through, and explaining a divorce to a 9-year-old without poisoning him against his father is some of the hardest work I have ever done. But I am steadier now than I was even before the photograph, and I will tell you why. Before, I had a big, comfortable life resting on a foundation I had never once tested. And some part of me, I think, always faintly knew it was untested. And that faint knowing is its own quiet weight to carry. Now I have a smaller life resting on something real. Two true friends, my two children, and the hard-won, unglamorous knowledge of exactly who I am and exactly what I will no longer agree to be. It is smaller. But it holds my weight. The big one, it turned out, never really did. If you have ever been the last to know, if you have ever discovered that a room full of people you trusted had quietly agreed to let you stay in the dark, then this story is for you. One word in the comments if it found you. Told, just that. It is for everyone who deserved the simple dignity of being told the truth about their own life, and who learned, the hard way, exactly who around them valued their own comfort more than your right to know. Subscribe for new stories. Real patterns, full narratives, the long game. Two small pieces of wisdom from this one before I go. The first, learn the difference between the people in your life who keep you comfortable and the people who keep you informed, because they are not the same people. And one day it will matter enormously which kind you have surrounded yourself with. The comfortable ones will smile at your dinners and protect your good mood and let you walk around with spinach in your teeth, or worse, for years, rather than risk one awkward moment. The ones who keep you informed will risk your being angry at them, will risk the friendship itself, to make sure you are never the last to know the truth about your own life. The second kind are rarer, and they are worth 10 of the first. When you find one, keep them, even when the truth they hand you is the truth you least want to hear. The second, if you are ever the one who knows, if you are ever standing in a circle that has quietly agreed to let someone be humiliated in the dark, understand that staying out of it is not the neutral, gracious thing it pretends to be. I know it feels kind. I know it feels like respecting their privacy, like not stirring the pot, like not your place. But a silence that protects everyone except the one person being wronged is not kindness, and it is not neutrality. It is a side, quietly chosen. Be the one who has the hard conversation. Be willing to be, for one afternoon, the person who carries the heavy thing, so that someone you love does not have to carry it alone for months without even knowing it is on their back. Be wary of the friends who keep you comfortable instead of informed. A silence that protects everyone but you is not kindness. It is a side being chosen. I'll see you next time.